Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to be creating a French country clock using this beautiful gold plastic charger that I got from Kmart Australia and Redesign products. My first step is to work out how big of a hole I need to make in the center so that I can add this clock mechanism. I'm going to first prop up the plastic charger plate with just some domino blocks that I had, and I'm going to be using a drill bit. Now I did start off with a smaller drill bit and realized that it really wasn't going to cut it. So after I've made the initial hole in the center section, I did then switch over to a larger and wider drill bit because the center part needs to be wide enough for the clock mechanism to go through. So definitely keep this in mind if you're going to be giving this a go. I'm then going to be using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in white. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this. I just love the shape of this plastic charger plate. As soon as I saw it, I knew I was going to be doing craft projects with it. I definitely wanted to make a clock. It has the perfect shape already, so keep that in mind around Christmas. Make sure you keep your eye out for these. I then took out Redesign's Enlightened Etchings mold. I have not used this one before, and I really love that top arched sort of style design. So I'm going to be using some fast cast resin. I'm going to be pouring out equal parts A and B. For this one, it took about 20 mils. And once I have the equal parts of A and B mixed together, I'm going to stir it really well together for about 30 seconds. I'm then going to start pouring the resin into the mold, just making sure I'm getting it in all of those little areas. You can use a popsicle stick to help move that around. And after about 10 minutes, it's ready. So I'm going to flex the mold to help that resin release. You can use resin release spray. You can get that on Amazon, I believe. And I've taken it out pretty soon after those 10 minutes are up because that is when the casting is at its most flexible. And I'm going to be positioning it up the top, and I'm going to have some of it overlapping, which is why I chose resin. It's stronger and clay would just break off if I tried to overlap it. So resin is definitely the best choice here. I'm going to be attaching it using my Gorilla Super Glue Gel. After I've put a decent amount on the areas that are going to touch the tray, I'm going to line that up in place and then press firmly. And it really only takes about a minute for this to take hold. I then took out Redesign's Regal Trimmings mold, and I am going to be using this with clay. So I'm going to begin by adding some cornstarch into the design that I want to use, and then I'm going to roll out some of my Resin Air Dry Clay and start working that into the mold. I'm pressing the clay down into the mold and then using my thumbs to push out the excess clay. And when I'm using Redesign molds, I sort of push them out to the sides a little bit. I'm then going to flex that mold, flip it over, and then roll the mold back to release my casting. I'm going to be casting 4 of these, and then I'm going to be gluing them to the surface using my Sealy's Quickset wood glue. Now with this particular mold, I decided to adjust how it was going to sit on the charger plate. You can see I'm sort of adjusting and angling the different parts of the mold, and as I was positioning these, I was very conscious of the face of a clock. So I tried to have those little round details at the 12, 3, 6, and 9 points, and I'm angling the pieces of that trim piece to show where the other parts, the other numbers on the clock would go, so that when the clock hands are on there, it's going to be easier to tell the time because I'm not going to be adding numbers to this clock. So I'm going to continue to glue those pieces down, making sure that I'm happy with the arrangement of the different trim pieces. And then I'm going to move on to using Redesign Salon De la Paix mold, and I'm going to dust that smaller design there with cornstarch and start working my air dry clay into that design. This is a more intricate design, so I am working slowly, pushing little bits of that clay out at a time. The ribbons are quite delicate there that are coming off that design there, and then I'm going to flex the mold, flip it over, and start pulling it back. This is the easiest way to get out more intricate designs. I'm then going to start positioning these around my clock face. I'm going to be casting 5 of this particular design to have on each of the curved sections of my clock, and then I'm going to start gluing each of those pieces in place. In case you missed the news, I am really excited to share with you guys that Redesign have made me a commissioned artist for them. They very kindly sent me some products to work with, and I am going to be doing 3 projects each month for them. I also now have a Redesign affiliate link, so if I inspire you to try any of the Redesign products that I am using in my videos, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. You will find it in the description below. Once I'd finished gluing all my castings down, I let them dry for several hours. I then took out Paint Couture's Farmhouse linen chalk paint. I'm going to pour some of that out into another container, and then I'm going to be adding some Saltwash texture additive. I'm going to be adding about half a capful at a time until I'm happy with the consistency. This is going to thicken up the paint and help me create texture on my project. Once I was happy with the consistency, I started dabbing and stippling the Saltwash mixture onto my clock face. I did begin by using a chip brush, but it wasn't giving me the look that I wanted, and it was a little bit tricky to get it down into the details. So I did end up switching over to a more tapered brush, a smaller tapered brush. And I found that that gave me the results that I wanted a little bit better. And I'm going to continue to add the Saltwash mixture over the entire project. This is going to give the piece a real old world look. It's going to make it look like the castings have been on this piece forever, almost like maybe they were wood carvings. And I tended to go back and rework the areas, so doing more dabbing and stippling over the top of areas I'd already been. And again, this is just going to add to that textured look. It's also going to help the resin piece blend in with the rest of the project as well. The next day, I came in with Redesign's Blush Symphony Transfer. This is from their most recent release, and it has 3 pages of beautiful roses of different tones. You've even got some smaller roses as well. I'm going to be using this particular design. I love the colors, I love the composition, and here I'm just working out exactly how I want it to sit on the clock face. Once I know how I want it to look, I'm going to cut off those extra roses. I've also cut around my transfer design as well, and then I'm going to cut off the pieces that are going not fit on the clock face. I'm going to cut them off, and I'm going to use them elsewhere here. You can see I'm already planning how I'm going to use it with one of those single rose heads there. And then I'm going to peel the white backing off and lay my transfer down in the center. I'm then going to begin rubbing the transfer. I like to go over the whole design first just to make sure everything is stuck down. And then I'm going to pick up a corner of the plastic there, and I'm going to start lifting as I'm rubbing. This definitely helps the transfer to release, and if you miss any areas, you can always put it back down and continue rubbing until you have everything down. I did find I had to sort of change directions a few times to make sure that I had all of those little delicate leaves down and in place. And then I started adding that rose head. This is a design that we are piecing together, and this is definitely something you can do with Redesign Transfers. You can piece it together to get a real custom look. Next, I took out Redesign's classic vintage labels. These are black designs that are sort of French typography. There's also obviously your more vintage labels there as well in English, and there's also some beautiful images, as you can see, beautiful birds, and there's also some florals and some bees. And I felt like this would definitely go perfectly with the Blush Symphony Transfer. I just had to find a design that would fit the clock face. And I already knew that I was probably going to go over the top of that top rose as well. But I decided on this one here. I know that that says coffee and vegetables, but I thought, well, this might end up in a kitchen, so that would actually be pretty perfect. And I really liked this one here, but I'm going to cut off the typography down the bottom, and I can use that on a different project. You can see that I have taken off the white backing of the first design. This is just helping me visualize how everything's going to look. I'm not pressing down. There's no real danger that I will accidentally transfer that over. But once I'm happy with it, I'm going to then press down and apply some pressure so that my transfer is in place. And then I'm going to go over the whole design, get it all stuck down. And just like before, I'm then going to pick up a corner of the transfer and I'm going to start pulling that back as I'm rubbing. Now these designs do take a little bit longer to transfer because there are so many intricate pieces, little designs that you have to make sure that you have down. So definitely be patient with this as you're working your way through. And then I'm going to position the one down the bottom there, and I'm going to keep rubbing that until I have the entire design down. Once I have that transferred down, I then took out Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin, and I'm going to be sealing those transfers so they're all secure and down, because I'm going to be layering in some other products in a little bit. So this is just going to make sure that my transfers don't get damaged. I'm also going to seal the rest of my clock face as well. I want a vintage look, so I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Crackle Step 1. I'm going to go around and add that in all of the negative spaces in the outside there, and I am also going to add a little bit in the center. As I said, I like a vintage look. If you wanted, you could definitely leave it here. I definitely think this looks lovely as is. I then came in with Paint Couture's Crackle Step 2 after I'd given Crackle Step 1 about 30 minutes. It felt sticky and tacky to the touch, so I'm layering in over the top of that with Crackle Step 2. Once that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Light Brown Sugar Antiquing Glaze. I'm going to begin by adding that over the top of my casting up the top there, really working that into the lower points. This is going to help give us some depth and dimension. And again, it's going to add to that vintage look. I'm going to work in sections, and I'm going to wipe back the excess from the high points using a wet wipe, and I'm also going to water down my glaze and help moving that excess a bit using my water mister. So it's probably a good idea to keep a water mister or a spray bottle on hand to help you remove as much of that glaze as you want. If you don't have access to the crackle or the glaze, but you want to achieve a similar look, you could perhaps create a paint wash with some brown water-based paint and use that instead. Just remember to put that clear coat down first. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. As I moved on to the center part of the clock there, I am going in a lot lighter. I definitely don't want to obscure any of those beautiful roses, so I'm using a lot of water and obviously that wet wipe a lot to pull back more of that product. Once the glaze was dry, I started adding Paint Couture's Bronze Lux Metallic to that top casting there. I'm going in pretty heavy, and I am going to be wiping back a lot of it. But if you like this look, the more bold, goldy bronze color on your projects, you don't have to wipe back as much as I end up doing. But I definitely wanted a more worn, sort of chateau even look, where it definitely looks like there's been a lot of time, a lot of age on this piece. But again, it's up to you and whatever your taste is. Maybe you could come in with a silver or a copper if bronze wasn't to your taste. As you can see, I'm working my way around the clock, adding that bronze, not going for full coverage. I'm just brushing that on. I do have a bit of a flat brush that I'm holding on an angle so that I don't get too much in other areas. I'm also going to be adding it to the trim detail that I added around the inner part of the clock, and I'm just going over the top of that. Pretty heavy in some areas because I am aware that I'm going to be wiping some of it back. And then I'm going to be very carefully going around the edge of the charger plate there, and I'm going over the top of that little rim. I'm not going to go for full coverage here. I'm going to allow my brush to skip certain areas. And then I let it dry for a little while, and then I came in with a wet wipe, and I'm going to wipe a lot of that back. The key definitely is to give it some time too dry. You don't want it to be all the way dry, but you don't want it to be too wet, because if it's too wet, you wipe off too much, too dry, and you're really going to struggle to wipe it back. But doing it this way definitely gives it a bit more of an authentically aged look. And something that I really loved, especially in this top mold section here, is as I was wiping it back, more of that crackle that we have underneath revealed itself, and it just really gave an authentically aged look. This is definitely a really fun technique to use if you like that weathered and worn French chateau look. I'm then going to continue to work my way around the clock, wiping back all of the areas where I have the bronze, still allowing a lot of it to sit there, but bringing back through some of that lighter farmhouse linen and also some more of that crackle, so that's a bit more visible. I then took out farmhouse linen. I'm going to get some of it on my brush, and then I'm going to offload a lot of it onto a paper towel, because I'm going to go in and start doing some dry brushing. My project is completely dry, and I am dry brushing that farmhouse linen over the entire project. So this is going to hit a lot of those top sections. It's going to further create the look of wear. It's going to lighten it up a little bit. So if you feel like you've gone in a little bit too heavy with glaze, this is one way that you can definitely tone that back a little bit. Or you could try a white paint wash, but this was definitely subtle enough for me. It definitely brightened things up in certain areas while still allowing it to have that worn look. And I'm going in now over the top of the center section, and I really like how it's catching a lot of the texture that I created with the Saltwash. It's making the transfers look aged without having to sand it, because sometimes when you sand the transfers, they tend to look scratched up. Doing this definitely gave it, as you can see, a little bit more of a vintage look without damaging the transfer. When that was dry, I flipped the clock over, and I'm going to use a wet wipe to wipe off all of that excess paint from around the back area so that I have a nice tidy black back there. I'm then going to be pushing through the clock mechanism so that the center part comes through the pre-drilled hole. I'm going to add the little nut that you add to hold the two pieces in place, and then I'm going to start adding the hand. So I'm adding the hour hand, then the minute hand, and obviously the second hand. Now you can get clock mechanisms in a lot of places. I got these from Amazon. This clock mechanism already has a hanging attachment to it, so it definitely saved me another step. And here's a look at our finished French country clock. I love how this turned out. I think it's hard to believe that this was just a plastic charger plate. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.